So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for today. I would like to introduce Julie and also thank Julie for her paper and the work that she's been doing, but also for taking the time today to prepare this session for you. Julie is a sociologist, a historian, and a lecturer, a researcher who's aiming to investigate fashion both as an industry and as a relationship between people and the clothes that they wear. She started at the University of Creative Arts as a sessional lecturer back in 1999, but her teaching really continues to explore this tension between big business and individual identity making. Initially, she was lecturing and tutoring at Goldsmiths and Southampton Solent University, but Julie's engaging and enthusiastic teaching soon turned her a full-time position at UCA. She teaches from first-year undergraduate through to postgraduate and doctoral level at education as well. She gained herself an MA in the history of dress and textiles at Winchester University School of Art, as well as another master's in research in media and communications at Goldsmiths. Her PhD in the Social Sciences Department of the University of Southampton was a thesis named Feeling Your Age, Preteen Fashionable Femininity, and that has inspired a raft of conference papers, journal articles, book chapter about girls negotiating with the supposed commercialization of childhood. And you'll recognize reflected in that the paper that we were delighted to publish in the Journal of Sociology in 2022, last year, which you have all been sent the link for to be able to use that and refer to that in your teaching. We've been looking at how that fits with quite a lot of different areas of the curriculum, and we'll be really interested to hear your ideas about that. Alison has been able to post some links for other resources that you'll find in our chat, so I'd really encourage you to be recording and saving those as well. So thank you, Alison, for that. Julie, we can't wait to hear from you, so I will now hand over to you. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Thank you again.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction. So as you heard, yes, education, I'm a bit of a sucker for it. I can't help but want to learn and find out more. And I just thought before I share my slides, I would just say, although I've never been an A-level teacher, obviously teaching has been my life for the last 23 years. Well, that was a good start. And whilst I've been teaching, I had some really interesting discussions with the students. I shared Angela McRobbie's work with them, and we read a piece about feminism and youth subcultures. And during that, we had a really interesting debate about dress and the body and identity. And one of the things that came out from that discussion was, is it only boys who do interesting things with their dress, i.e. they create subcultures and they rebel and they express their identity in all sorts of interesting ways through their clothes? And somehow lots of the discussion is around, well, girls seem to just follow fashion in a sort of blind way, very passively. And this got students really quite cross. And it got me thinking, and we had lots more discussions about other news stories that were coming up about girls. And this is one of the things that then started me thinking about what I wanted to do for a PhD. And so I'm going to talk about that work here today. So let me share my slides. So the title of the piece that you may have read now is Feeling Time, Fashioning Age, Preteen Girls Negotiating Life Course and the Aging Process Through Dress. And this is an image from the paper. It's one of my participants, Georgia. It's her absolute favourite outfit. so favourite that she took 27 photographs of this, but I'll be telling you more about that in a bit. So yes, I teach at the University for the Creative Arts, and the overview of this presentation today. So first of all, I'm going to introduce my initial research. So I'll talk a little bit about my thesis, what inspired it and how I went about it. I'll explore some current theorising about childhood, about fashion, ageing and time. I'll explain about my own methodology, how I chose to go about doing this piece of research. And then I'll convey the key findings that relate to age, gender, temporality and dress. And then finally, I'll suggest some conclusions. But as Jill said, anywhere along the line you want to ask a question, make a comment, please do. So the thesis, Feeling Your Age, Preteen Fashionable Femininity. So developing from those discussions with the students, I was looking at various things that were going on in media, in popular discourse, and there seemed to be lots and lots of discussion about what was happening to little girls. And the idea seemed to be that what they thought was happening was that childhood was becoming tainted, it was being lost, that it was becoming really commercial and very sexualized. Emblematic of that is one of the government reviews that took place. I mean, there were a number of them. There were a number of them here, both in England, Scotland. There were other ones around the world. Clearly, this was something that people were incredibly concerned about. So this Bailey review, published in 2011, was called Letting Children Be Children. And as you can see, it's called the report of the commercialization and sexualization of childhood. So these two things are always talked about absolutely hand in hand with each other. So this review envisages an ideal childhood, but instead suggests that children are becoming pressured into growing up too soon. And this, this chimed with absolutely all of the discussions that were happening in the media, that there was somehow a perfect, idealized childhood that children should be enjoying. There was lots of mentions of ponies and lots of talk about nature. And clearly what people were worried about is that these things weren't happening. Instead, lots of commercial products, lots of consuming of things was happening in a way that was somehow corrupting those children. And sexy, fashionable dress is often seen as a contributory factor in this commercializing, sexualizing process, something which is done to girls. So here we've got a section from the review, clothing, products and services for children. I've just enlarged some of the text there. This is a quote from a parent. Designers need to be challenged to consider what they are doing to children. So here, this is about something which people feel is being done to children. And yet so much of the research that appeared within this review and in all the other reviews was about parents. It was about parents' feelings about what they thought was happening to childhood and to children. There was actually very, very little research that was about, from the point of view of the young girls themselves, to examine whether any of these fears were at all well-founded. So it's all about adults' perception of what's happening to children rather than what is actually happening to children themselves. So I sort of started with thinking about, well, okay, what do we think of childhood? Why is it so kind of idealized? Why do people have these views? And I looked at, lots of journalists had these sort of very personal views about it. And it was often a kind of reflection of quite often what they'd felt about their own childhood, how beautiful it was kind of looking back and seeing that the childhood that they'd had was not the childhood that they could see that was happening for children now. So it led me down the path of the research all about the social construction of childhood. I mean, actually in my thesis, I look at people like Aries, who examined portraits to see how childhood has changed. Now, in lots of those pictures, he was saying, well, actually, children are shown as just miniature adults. They're wearing exactly the same kind of clothes. They're just shown as small figures. And for him, that's evidence that people didn't see children in quite the same ways as we do now. And so through this kind of research, I mean, I ended up with a whole huge chapter about the construction of childhood. And it actually, it sparked something with students that I talked with about this, is that quite a lot of them then were like, oh yes, I want to write about childhood and how it's being corrupted. And I said, well, just have a think, have a think about what we know about children of the past. Let's kind of think about what it was like to be a Victorian child. And they started, we read some pieces together and then started to talk and say, well, oh yeah, girls as young as 12 were getting married. Working class children were working down mines in textile industry. Oh, okay, so that's a very different idea about what children should be like. But of course, I was focusing my research on now, so I had to then think, well, okay, what is happening to our ideas about what childhood is at this moment? And I kind of identified two main contradictory discourses about childhood. One of those is about children as vulnerable, children as being at risk from all sorts of things. So in contemporary life, we've had moral panics about paedophiles, video games, social media. I mean, I've got a selection of a few things here, about use of technology, about sexting, about padded bras. All sorts of things are seen as somehow impinging and being a problem for children, that there's going to be some kind of difficulty posed by these things. Though I did really like this one from the conversation, where somehow it's become mother's problem to deal with their kids' technology use. But at the same time as envisaging childhood as being this time of vulnerability, where the assumption is that children have no ability to be able to kind of respond to these things in anything that's in any other way that's going, apart from kind of it being detrimental to them. At the same time, we've got this kind of notion of children as increasingly being talked about as citizens, of consumers. So this is the sort of latest UN Charter of Rights of Children. The poster, I mean, altogether it's got 54 rights for children. Things like access to education, things about them protecting their identity. So covering all sorts of aspects of childhood and children's rights. And as I say, at the same time, thinking of children as being consumers. So Buckingham charts the advertising as kind of shifting from having addressed the adult to be like, well, you're the one that's got the money. You're going to know best for your child. You choose what out of these games or these products. To this marked shift to being actually a lot of advertising addressing the child themselves and saying, actually, you know you best. What do you want? Which products are you going to buy? So, I've just chosen a couple of images here to sort of sum that up. Then the notion of sort of addressing the child and saying, here this McDonald's thing about, you can be the star, you. So this sort of sense of, we can address you and you will be able to respond to this. moving beyond these these ways in which adults are thinking about children, to think, well, okay, for my thesis, I was going, well, what kind of useful academic research has been done? I'd read lots of these sort of panicked media responses and Mumsnet and so on, but what's being usefully written by considered researchers? And of course, well, I'm going to turn to the sociology of childhood to see, well, what's being written here that might be helpful to us. And again, this has been the shift to viewing children as agents, as having their own ability to self-determine, to reflect on the world, to be able to participate and make decisions. So that has meant that there has been this increase over the last 20 years of research that actually researches with children themselves as active participants. But just because we've got that shift, there is still, there are all these structures which are impacting on children, how children's lives are being lived. So I looked into discussions around social and sexual generationing structures. So social structures, we've got age, grade and age class. So age grade, this shifting notion of what is a child, what is a teenager, when do you make it into adulthood? And in fact, that's something that my kids are 12, twin boys, they're very interested to know at what point, yes, are we going to be a teenager? Well, yes, you've got to wait till you're 13. Why would I be so different when I'm 13? And then, well, what does it mean to be an adult? Oh, are we driving a car? What are the things that, so with these sort of shifting, changing structures that mean at any one moment, like now we have, you are a child, therefore you must do these things and you cannot do these things. And then we've got age class. So, they're going through schooling in which there's this arbitrary, here in England, at least, September. You're born between September and September, well, you belong in this class. And again, this sort of set of rules of, well, you'll need to learn these things, we expect you to do these things, and so on. And then sexual generationing, Reynolds says, well, this is a way in which we have ideas about what knowledge of sex should you have at any one point, at what age are you going to be taught certain things, or are you allowed to have certain sexual knowledges? And I guess that links back to the sort of idea of the childhood innocence and vulnerability, and people seeing a problem happening if something is making you sexy too soon. Using stuff from the field of fashion, I wanted to think about, well, okay, so this is what childhood's like, but well, I'm going to be looking at the dress, how we dress and how that helps us with notions of identity. So I looked to the fashion writings about the fashion system, and we can see people like Bartkey and Bordeaux who talk about the fashion system as maintaining a beauty ideal which is internalized by women, to feel the need to be thin, to be hairless, to look young, to be hyper feminine, as Jackson et al. Talk about. To be hyper feminine, so they talk about hyper feminine as being very pretty, to want to be pretty, to want to look a bit sexy, but this is very key, not to be too excessive in your sexual display. And obviously Skeggs has done lots of work around this. So, this fine line, look a bit sexy, but not too sexy. And to disdain women who are looking too sexy. In terms of dress, people like Bordeaux were mostly kind of thinking about fashion as a discourse, but there has been a growth of empirical work looking at, well, exactly how do adults use their clothes? What do they buy? What do they wear? How does it feel? What does it tell them about who they are? How do they try to construct their identity through dress? And the materiality literature, and my interest here came from, well, I did a history of dress and textiles MA, and I just, initially it was just, I had this sense that fabric, the way that garments feel on your body was going to have some bearing on the types of clothes that you might wear, or how they might help you to construct your identity. And so using the work of Sherlock, Woodward and Fisher, looking at this, the tactile relationship between garments and the formation of identities. And then the final set of research that I found really useful was all about aging and time. Now, it wasn't something I'd initially looked at. I thought it was going to be all about sexiness and about gendered identities. It was only as the research started that I began to realize, oh, okay, we've got all this stuff. So, well, I've got to read some literature. I've got to understand what do we already know about aging and our understanding of time. Well, Hockey and James, of course, when their life course as not being a structural set of fixed events, these are the way that things are going to happen, but this unpredictable flow where we're constantly sort of thinking back to, oh yeah, when that happened, but at the same time thinking about, oh yeah, but when that happens, and that kind of then helping you to think about the now and saying, well, it goes back and forth. We're not just sort of plodding along and ignoring the past or not looking to the future, but they kind of a movement between all of these. But they argue, Hockey goes on to do some research with others to talk about how memory is absolutely crucial in knowing who we are, that our memories help us to inform of, well, how has time passed? Where are we in our lives? That event has happened, but where am I now? So that, again, that kind of reflecting back and then forward again. And on the other hand, we've got the moving right into the sort of future, this notion of anticipatory enculturation, not one easily said. And this explores how children anticipate the future through knowledge of consumer goods. So, for example, thinking through, well, when I get a PlayStation, I'll be a big boy, therefore I'll be able to play all sorts of exciting games that I'm not allowed to play now. So this sense of using goods to think about who you will be in the future. And of course, I'm going to be thinking about how we might use that in terms of dress. So what did I do? So I'm coming at it from thinking, well, if most of the research so far has been about how adults think about childhood, what we need to do is say, well, but the children themselves, these girls, what do they know? What do they understand? What do they think? How do they use dress in their daily lives? So I wanted to use a whole range of mixed qualitative methods. And I researched with 32 predominantly white middle-class girls aged 8 to 11 years old in the south of England. So years 4 and year 6 at school. And I did it at two different schools, using, the head teachers there as sort of gatekeepers. I had to send a lot of letters out before eventually, yes, please let me in. And then having to get sort of permissions from not just the parents, but of course, given my ethical views, from the children themselves, wanting to say, well, they have the right to say yes or no to this research. What did I decide to do with them? Well, so I wanted to use this mixed qualitative methods because I wanted to create a multifaceted picture, the richness of girls interacting with each other, but also girls interacting with their clothes and the materiality of dress. So I decided, well, okay, how am I going to get the interaction between the girls? Well, focus groups. Fashion is this shared phenomenon, an intersubjective practice. So I got these groups together of between 3 and 9 participants, and they discussed fashion and clothes. I barely, I'd gone into it thinking, oh God, I hope it's going to be all right. I hope I've got enough questions. I needn't have worried at all. Ask a couple of things and suddenly, it was like lighting up, but they all just, wow. They got up, they walked around, they pulled each other's clothes, they did little struts around, they had a little fashion show, twirls. So did it on days when they were wearing their own clothes to school. So they were able to show off things, but then also say, well, no, it went like this. Oh, it was a bit, there. Oh, but she wears her skirts up here. Oh, no, you wear them there. They're for the boobs. I don't yet have, loads of kind of interesting things. I mean, I'd love to do another whole set of work around just the sort of sheer interactions between the girls. So yeah, they were able to show me things about their bodies and about the clothes they were wearing there, and also the clothes that they had at home by saying, she pulls it in like this and that's how it looks. So that obviously helped to redress the balance between me as the researcher and them. A lot of the time it was like, I had, could we please? I mean, luckily a couple of them were really good at going, I don't think we're talking about what she asked us about. And I'd be like, well, no, that's fine. But eventually they would kind of call them to order, as Patera calls it. But then I also wanted to get this really personal relationship with, well, what does it, what clothes do you choose to have on your body? Why do you like them? How do they feel? So I also did this participant photography, using fashionable clothes as specific material objects. So like I said, with Georgia's outfit that she took the 27 photographs of, I gave them disposable cameras because at their age, I suppose if I was doing it now, it'd be more likely the older ones would probably have a phone, but the younger ones might not. And they weren't quite at that stage. So I was like, well, I'll give you these cameras, but of course they'd not come across them before. So we had to have a little lesson. How do you use it? Why can't I see the picture I've just taken? They said, it doesn't work like that with these. So yeah, there was a lot of sort of to and froing with that, but eventually they went off and took these photographs. And then they came back and I mean, some of them decided to opt out. They said, no, I haven't done it. Some of them, and now I understand just how busy school children's lives are. They probably just didn't have time. So I am very grateful that, 20 odd of them came back with photographs. So then we had these interviews about, the individual body and the physical relationship with specific clothes. And I let them choose. I said, here's your packet of photographs. And of course we had the whole, what are these? I said, they're negatives. That's how they make the photograph. Thinking I should have done some homework. I'm not quite sure how it works, but so I let them choose the photographs so that they could decide if there were ones they didn't want to show me. And most of them did have a couple where either they'd got a friend in, or perhaps they weren't looking so great or something. But actually I'd had said, take pictures of the clothes, not you yourself, because I didn't want to have that ethical issue of, am I blanking out faces or whatever. So it should be of the clothes. So what did I find out? Well, negotiating age was this, I mean, I found out loads of stuff, but the important things that I think is the real sort of new knowledge was about negotiating age and experiencing temporality through dress. And I'm going to break that into 3 areas. So we've got dressing to look older. So girls understood fashion's relationship to becoming heterosexually attractive, or in their terms, girly. They talked about liking pink, wearing fashionable clothes, wearing short shorts or short skirts. Being girly also is worrying about dirty clothes. Don't ever go out if you're dirty. That's smelling nice. But yeah, definitely about where they knew it was about wearing these short shorts and short skirts. But you know, it wasn't a case of, well, I'm just going to wear these things and not worry about it. There was a line. They knew between you can be girly and appropriately girly, but you mustn't show too much. So they are already aware of this, of the cultural expectations of femininity, to be sexy, but not too sexy. And there was talk about, oh, who hasn't done it right? Oh, so-and-so, she shows too much. You know, they talked about people who luckily weren't part of the research itself. Then there was talk about, oh, she stuffs things down her top. And so they were clearly people that they were saying, you know, they're not doing it right. They're doing too sexy. Whereas, you know, us girls, we get it just right. We know how to wear the skirt, but not too short. There was engagement with childhood discourse, and I think that that was a little bit more of a surprise in terms of that they were aware of the discussions around childhood innocence, protecting innocence, about not growing up too soon. And they discussed this and said, well, I loved it. I mean, they sounded like some old ladies at some points. We're growing up too fast. You know, aware that there's these discussions about childhood and that people perceive that they're growing up too fast. Talk about, well, we are. A lot of the time it was othering, so they're growing up too fast. But I thought this was interesting in one group talking about we're growing up too fast. But, and this is really important, they did understand that aged gendered performances, so the times when you're allowed to be very girly, when you can wear makeup, high heels, style your hair, wear short skirts, they understood these as being absolutely context specific. You don't just wear it any old time. There are only certain occasions where you're allowed to wear these things. And in fact, not only allowed, but encouraged by the adults around you. So for example, just to show you what I mean. So this is Emma's, one of Emma's photographs. This is her raggedy trousers. I loved it. So they're all torn and ripped at the knees. So the antithesis of being girly, which is about smart and, you know, not dirty. These are raggedy. She said, well, you know, I wear these for walking the dog. I go out on my bike on them, you know, because I'm just sort of outdoorsy, really. So she had this real sense of herself as being outdoorsy, and wearing raggedy trousers is absolutely fine for that. But she did say, photograph of this dress. So I was like, having discussed the raggedy trousers and showing me lots of sort of clothes that were a bit ripped or torn, and lots of long sleeve tops that just had some kind of cute animal on it, to then show me this. So this, you know, beautiful white dress with a chiffon overlayer. It's got some satin on it. It's got a big satin bow. It's got some sparkly bits on the bodice. It's worn with a little sort of white, well, she's even showing us that it's worn with a white fur bolero. So I was like, oh, okay, that's that, you know, that this is sort of a bit of a surprise. Oh, and she talked about the heels that she wore with it. When she showed me this, she said, I don't like dresses, but I won't try to get out of wearing them. When I need to wear them, I will. She understood there are certain occasions in which you are expected to dress girly. People are going to do your hair, they're going to put makeup on you or encourage you to put your makeup on. They're going to want you to put the heels on and the sparkly dress. You do it for those occasions, but that doesn't stop you from the next day being the outdoorsy girl wearing the raggedy trousers. So it's this sort of code switch. You know, you can code switch between these different moments where you can act up to being older and then dress back down to being the little girl again. And in fact, another little example of this is in a discussion about the school disco, the following exchange took place. So this is a different group of girls, younger, the aged 8 group. Abigail said, so we were talking about school disco, what are you going to wear for it? Abigail says, it's the time like when you're with everyone at school, where teachers don't care what happens. Ellen then said, it's time you got to wear whatever you wanted. Mia, and you could kiss if you wanted. Ellen, and my mum wouldn't care what I wore then. The school disco, you're allowed to wear what you want, even if it's like inappropriate, too grown up for you. So clearly they're aware of sexual generationing, the positioning of them as children too young normally to do sexy stuff, not supposed to normally kiss, wear your short skirt, or there was actually talk in that discussion about wearing a strapless dress. You don't normally do that sort of stuff. School disco, it's not just even that you're allowed, you know, people don't care. They want you to wear these things. You know, they're letting it happen, this moment of sort of carnival-esque moment when you can dress up, age up. Dressing in the past and the present. So I want to just address the notion of kind of looking backwards a little. Now, other people have talked about, like Pilcher, talked about the ways in which girls don't like, as they get older, they talk about other people wearing babyish clothes. And certainly some of the girls did that. They sort of pointed out the window, oh, you know, those children out there wear their babyish clothes. But they also talked about their past selves and distanced themselves from the babyish clothes they used to wear. So Georgia, for example, said, I was very unfashionable when I was younger. Lauren says, yeah, I wore like baby stuff with ducks on it. Georgia then says, I used to look like a cowboy when I was younger. So, you know, that was in the past. I used to wear those babyish things, the ducks, and looking like a cowboy. I mean, lots of girls talked about the past was when you wore baggy, masculine clothes. Now you wear skinny jeans, more form-hugging stuff, because that's a part of being the girly girl now, not like the boy that you were previously. But they also talked about, so here they go. This is the favorite outfit again. So this is about the looking to the past and thinking about now. So this is Georgia's favorite outfit, as I've said. She absolutely loved it. She loved it so much. And when she talked about it, her eyes lit up. You know, each time she showed me another photograph, at first I thought, God, what on earth are we going to talk about if it's just the same outfit? But it meant so much to her. And clearly when she was wearing this outfit, it really made that right mix of inner and outer. She, you know, it felt like her and she wanted to show it off to people. But so she took the photographs in December and I didn't see her till the January when schools came back. So I said to her, well, you know, how does it feel now? She said, well, at the moment it feels really uncomfortable because they're really short and tight. But when I used to wear it, I used to think I was like all cool and that And I'd walk around really proud of my outfit, just like, look at me. And, you know, that sense of herself as being that there was absolutely this fit between the clothes and the identity she wanted to create. It was just perfect in this moment through this outfit. But now the trousers are too tight, they're too short. And so she's thinking back to the past. Oh, that's who I was. And it was great. What am I going to do now? You know, no, these clothes don't fit. So they constantly, you know, children are constantly having to reassess who they are because their clothes don't fit them and they're constantly growing out of them. So there's this feeling of, oh, that was the perfect me. How am I going to create it now? Because those clothes no longer fit me. I've got to find a whole new set of clothes. So many experienced growing out of clothes as both a fear of losing identity and a way of exploring who they currently were. And then the final section, which is about, so we've had this sort of going back to the past, but that's, you know, enabling you to think about who you are now. And now I want to look at the data that was about projecting to the future, but also thinking about the now. So clothes acted as transitional objects to future identities. They allowed them to talk about the symbolic movement from one identity state to another, from pre-teen to teen. So, for example, this picture of underwear that Lucy took. So it's her, and this is exactly what she said, it's my crop top for next year, and they're my pants. So then when I was like, well, your crop top for next year, what? So you don't wear it now? Or, well, she said, it's a pretend crop top. I'm only allowed to wear it in bed now. So she talked about, well, so it's pretend because she can only wear it to bed now. She's not allowed to wear it out. And she talked about how, but next year I'll be allowed to wear it when I need it. And she did do, you know, this sort of gesticulator around the chest. So in other words, this was allowing her to think about, well, now I'm only allowed to wear it as pretend because I don't have boobs, but next year I will have boobs and they'll fit and fill out that top. And how will that feel? You know, I'll be a different person. So that projecting into the future then helped her think about who she was now, the kind of current lack that her body had. And the same thing happened with high heels. People talked about, well, you know, they allowed you to feel like, yes, with my high heels, I'm imagining what it's like to be a taller girl. And then I take them off and I'm back to being short me as I am now. So that's it, sort of backwards and forwards process, this continuous flow that Hockey and James talked about. It's my conclusion then. Girls negotiate discourses of fashion, childhood, and femininity through their clothes. They thought through what it's like to be the ideal body, to be the girly girl, to be very fashionable and feminine. But you do that at certain occasions. Sometimes, you know, think about the notion of childhood. Sometimes you're allowed to be grown up and to grow up fast by wearing certain clothes. But, you know, it's a negotiation because you do it for that moment in time, and then you're back to being the younger self when you're not at the disco or when you're at home. Girls' understanding of their age is through the interrelationship between the past, the present, and the future. And all of those things could be experienced via their clothes. Put on the clothing, feel what it might be like to be the bigger, older girl. You put on the tight clothes and you remind her of what it was to be in the past. And then all of that help you think about, who am I right now? Dress may play a role in how we all locate ourselves on our life course, as our relationship between our clothes and our bodies changes as we age. So we're all getting different feedback. You know, we've got things in our wardrobes that we used to wear that they were perfect, they were us. And the next time, they've grown a bit tighter, or maybe they're a bit looser, or perhaps just don't feel the same. Thinking about what we used to wear and what we might wear as we get older could help us think through who we are right now. So here are some of the texts that I was referring to. And now we get to the bit where we can ask some questions if you have some.
Oh, thank you so much, Julia. We've just come to the hour now, to 5 o'clock. So yeah, just to thank you very much for a really, really fascinating talk. It's been great that you could do this. I hope everyone sort of found it interesting, and thanks everyone else for attending and for your questions. Just to remind you, we will we've recorded this, so we will sort of find a way to put it up, so hopefully it can be a sort of longer lasting resource too. But yeah, just to say thank you to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everyone.